Just come out this afternoon with my old friend Federico, and we're just waiting to see if we're going to get lucky, basically, with this sky. We're in a little location here I found a few years ago where you get multiple options looking at different subject matter, and we're just going to let the light dictate what we do and the atmosphere. That direction's looking really good. It's just whether or not the light meets us halfway. About 20 minutes time, we'll know if we're going to get lucky or completely shut down. Good chance to do some composition checking. There's already some color building, guys, so I don't know, we might get lucky here. Find some nice flow leading to the peak. Really like to incorporate the trees. Oh man, there's some light. Just got to get the right flow of water to bring it to life. You don't just want to have flowing water, you know, you want the water flow to complement the scene and lead to it, not just have white crazy water everywhere. This water's just going the wrong direction. I need it to flow towards the peak. Oh mate, it's always nice to just let the conditions dictate the composition. The main light is going to be this way. It's been one of those days where there was always potential for something good to happen, but lots of potential for it to be a complete bust. And from experience, I've learned if there's a sliver of a chance, you should always go for it. And it looks like it's paying off now because the light is just getting better and better, and it's probably going to be a very fleeting moment. Look at that beautiful water. I'm trying to step on these rocks here while holding a camera and a GoPro, asking for trouble. Gonna go for a quick telephoto image. Ah, look at that. Where's the comp? That's the question. Woo! Look at that. Such a shame about this dead tree reaching out. It's just hitting the mountain. Otherwise I would have had a clean perspective of the fern, the river, then the peak. That dead tree there means I'm going to move along. We might be able to find something similar perhaps. Pretty dense forest here though. And time is ticking. Even a few ferns in the front. You can see how beautiful the forest is here. Let's have a look ahead. Oh. I only need one shot. I would like one nice image here. I don't need 6 or 7 average ones. So you just slow yourself down. It's fun. I love the challenge, even though sometimes you wish it would be a little bit easier. Ah, that's seriously magical in every direction. Shame about that boulder down there. I'm just not too convinced on that. There's a little window. This might be the shot here. It's a tight little fit, but Just got to get separation with this tree here. That's kind of the comp there that I'm looking at. A natural window. Separation between the layers, it's one of the considerations. Big dynamic range, so just watching the highlights. Some of my favorite conditions, low light, atmospheric. Ah, sensational. I think we've got this image now. Happy days. Beautiful, soft light. Some good balance in this foreground with these two stones left and right. Woo, lost for words. How do we get out of here is the question. Might have to just embrace the wet socks, I think. Now, I had a shoot down here many years ago. It's actually on the YouTube channel, but most of you probably haven't seen it. Similar conditions, but it's always good to return somewhere after a few years if you want to try a fresh approach. Or look at that now. Wow. Yeah, down in there, I reckon. Just the atmosphere is so good. It gives all that separation. Yeah. Man, oh. That, mate. Woo! All right, we better get out of here, eh? What a blessing. Right at the last minute. If there's any chance, you just go for it, right? All right, everyone, let's have a quick look at the raw files here. I've just selected two. These are pretty close to probably what I'd end up keeping. Now, look how dark these are. You know, this is one of the challenge of capturing these big dynamic range scenes. You're exposing for the highlights, which means all the shadows are going to be falling pretty dark. You see on the histogram up here, but as you would have heard me mention in the past, you know, this workflow and this approach it's very common, and it allows us then in post right here to essentially reveal the details. But of course, you know, looking at the back of the camera out in the field, it's not very satisfying to see such dark tones. And if you're not used to processing and shooting this way, you might think you're doing something wrong, but as you know, if we expose for the shadows, which might look a bit more like this, then what's happening to the sky? You're just going to lose absolutely everything. So definitely, you know, coming home like this is quite common when I'm shooting directly towards the sunrise or the sunset, especially with mountain scenes. It's all backlit. And the workflow, I'm not going to do a proper start to finish right here, guys, but it's more, I want to show you how to get the colors back. So essentially I'd bring this exposure up, bring the shadows up a bit. I'll drop the highlights down partially, throw a landscape profile on, but then especially for up in that sky, I'm just going to grab a brush now, dial back some exposure and highlights, and just basically just gently hit that area up there. And all right, now when it comes to the color, again, I'm not trying to do a proper start to finish. I'm just kind of giving you that ballpark and the importance of color grading, the power that we have with the grading. I'll definitely jump in the color tab here and maybe experiment. In this case, maybe cooling things down slightly, putting a little bit of vibrance in there as well. But then more importantly, with the grading, this is going to allow us to try and bring back some of that warm hue which was up in the sky. You can see it on that high cloud. There's the magenta up there, the orange, especially on that cloud there, but it's just really looking flat. It's just the nature of the raw files sometimes. It definitely looked a lot better to the eye. I'll bring up the highlights here. So you pick the hue that you want. In this case, I'm going for a warmer hue, and then to apply the saturation, it's this inner circle dragging out, and I hold shift, and that way it stays fixed on that hue. And you'll see here, look at the difference that's making to the sky. Okay, now it's not just the sky, it's anywhere there's a highlight, so it will affect the trees and the river as well.
Another thing I'd consider in this particular scene is maybe cooling the midtones, which will also affect the sky. If I warm them up, it's going to affect the forest too much. So I'd probably dial that back into a cooler tone, and that's giving that beautiful color contrast up there. We've got the warm and the cool. If I turn the grading off altogether, you can see how the cloud is more of a white. Now it's warmer, but having that blue backdrop in the mids really accentuates the warm. So could even dial that. And I might go overboard for the sake of the lesson with these hues here. The shadows often I'll cool them, but they're already cool enough. Lots of blue down there anyway. And one last thing, if I just wanted to work on that sky area with the brush, you could also throw on a touch of, warmer hues manually by just putting it on the brush. So I've done the temperature and tint and just hitting that general area up there, just clicking through. So you'll see where the brush is gone. I'll just hover over all over the place. A little bit of warming like that, see the difference, a little bit of magenta. And if we do it before and after, that's what it was, that's where we're at. So you're just bringing out the subtle colors. Because the light was over there as well, I'd probably bring the exposure up in that area with just a bit of a brightening there, so it looks a bit more natural considering it's a backlit scene. That gives you a very rough ballpark. If I was really refining the process, I'd then begin my depth and separation by lifting shadows and blacks in the distance, and then that'll help separate the foreground from the midground. Gives you a very, very rough idea anyway. Maybe even a slight darkening in the top part of the sky. But as you know, if you've seen me teach processing before on the channel, or maybe you've got some of my tutorials, this is the main tool that I use, the brush, and it just allows us to go in and just more or less work like a painter to some degree, work in those localized areas. So we'll do it before and after again. Like I said, I'm not trying to finish this off properly. There's still more you do, but I just wanted to show you the importance of the grading to get those colors back in, because sometimes they just come out so flat. You could hear the excitement in my voice in the field. It looked amazing, but we look at that raw file again and it's like, gee, okay, where's it all gone? There's hints of it up there, but now when we got to this scene down here, this is the rough comp that I really liked. We've just got a beautiful natural frame here. We've got a linear perspective where we see the river being wide, tapering narrow. We even have that in the tree line, wide and narrowing in. It just works really well. Now let's go in here and same thing, chuck a landscape profile. We've got to brighten everything up, bring the shadows up to some degree, and then we've blown out the sky slightly, so I'd bring those highlights down. Okay, and I'd actually probably just crop this in slightly, just a little less foreground really. You can see that balance I was talking about in the field, the large rock on the right and one on the left. Get rid of that down here. And again, like I said before with the previous one, the color grading is your friend. So back to the grading, we'll just darken that down, not that much, but anyway, we'll dial it back. And with the grading, jump on in and warming up the highlights, which is really going to affect back here. Jump on. And the other one with this one, so warm the highlights. You can see the sky with the result we're getting up there. But the midtones and the shadows, I think, could be a little cooler for that natural contrast we get in nature. But the river, the river right now is very grey. There's not too much colour in there. It's very muted. If we cool those mids, see that subtle blue we're getting? So obviously subtlety is key. And when you're doing a video like this, you're not trying to get the exact result, so please don't come at me in the comments, but hopefully you're picking up what I'm putting down, okay? So a nice color contrast, cool and warm, does work well. It's what we often get in the golden hours. And the last one on this one would be just like before with the brush, just manually put in some of that warming, especially in the distance where the light is, like that. And I'd always pull those details up in the background for that atmospheric perspective. Okay, should be a bit lighter in that distance compared to the front, and then maybe the opposite right in the foreground, bigger tonal range. So maybe on the curves, drop these dark tones and hit that foreground. It's closer to the viewer, darker, and then progressively getting lighter in that distance. Pick your poison, shadows, blacks, do it with the curves, whatever you like, just to really pull the eye back through. Again, that's a very incredibly rushed way of doing it, but it gives you an idea, doesn't it? Really showing how you can use the grading to help you just get those details back in. If you're shooting these huge dynamic ranges, don't be discouraged. It's all in there, just using these adjustments to bring it out. And the key, as always, is making sure that you're going home with the data. So often that's what I'm thinking. I'm not making the exposure in the field. I'm collecting the data by referencing the histogram. And then in the processing now, I'm finishing the exposure. As long as I've got the data there to begin with, then we're all good. And you can see how quick, as I quickly run through again on this one, how very quickly you can manipulate the tones that you've captured and bring back what's there. We're not adding anything that wasn't here. We're just working with what we had and trying to make the most of what we captured at the end of the day. So it's a way of shooting that may not be familiar to all of you. Shooting to the right, getting the histogram as bright as we can, and then basically finishing that exposure back home in post. And you have these very dark raw files, but don't be discouraged. It's all there to be adjusted, and the more you process like this, the more confident you'll be out in the field, because you can just look and check the histo and say, yeah, I've got the data I need. I'll be able to reveal X and Y details later on. Anyway, thanks for joining me. Just a quick video this week, and I look forward to seeing you in another one soon. Leave any questions below. Hope you enjoyed. It's always a pleasure, guys. Cheers.